Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining in with me and G. I'm super excited to do this live today because I think one of the most hyped people in growth in the world is you, G.
Hey, Stefan.
So
Thanks.
I'm
Thank you
super
for the kind
eager
words.
to eager to kind of pick your brain today about how to do growth at a world class level and not just like all us humans who kind of just do normal kind of doubling year on year.
Whoa, calm down here.
But to all of you who are listening, take this as kind of a session that you're a part of, and utilize the chat field on LinkedIn so you can ask G your questions as well. We'll pick them up as we go along. I've written down some questions that I'll be asking G, but I know he can go so deep on any of them, so we'll see how many of them we get through.
Let's see. Make it happen.
But G, for those that haven't come across you yet, what's kind of been what's been your career so far, and what's led you to become this master of growth in many people's opinion?
Yeah, for sure. It's been a long career. It's been more than 20 years now, and I'd say that I've held various marketing roles over the 20 years. But I think that the couple of defining moments, and there's a lot of luck involved, to be honest, is that I think a couple of defining moments. One, I worked in IT security in 2011, 2012. Launching a SaaS application for security purposes, working with engineers, and I learned a lot about the technical workings of the internet there. Second, I was an entrepreneur, and I was in charge of the engineering and product teams, and so I learned how to work with engineers as a marketer, just because I was the more technical co-founder of the bunch. And third, I then went into a couple of SaaS businesses as a marketing leader with that technical baggage. And so I was able to do things like, for example, coming in and says, hey, the measurement is not there. We need something that is going to measure the behavior of the acquisition of all the users. And we're talking of 2015, 2016. And I implemented this new thing called Segment, right? Which was the best thing ever back then. And, in some cases, maybe still now, right? And I was able to pull that off as a marketer, implement it, and unify all the tracking through one single stack, which was not common back then. And then I went on to do keynotes and talk about it, was hired by Segment because of who is this marketing guy who's talking about a engineering, build product here. And then went on to be an operator. And because the timing was right and I had the technical understanding as a marketer, growth just happened at that time. And it was that's who I am. Technical marketing, which is growth, using engineering, talents, skills, frameworks to drive acquisition. That's exactly what I do. And so I landed into this situation where I was obviously doing growth without knowing it in the late 2010s. And, not going to go through every role, but that's it. That's it. And that's why even today, when I think what I'm good at, I'm really good at stitching pieces of technology that exist or building some unique things to create an experience for our future customers that is unlike what competitors can do. And that's the differentiation. I like being on the cutting edge. I like having new technology. And you think like Dream Data, when I sourced you guys back at Gorgias, we're in the first customers. Yeah, we were in the first, I don't know how much customers, because I like saying, hey, there's this new piece of technology. This could give me, a competitive advantage. This could be interesting. And often it's not. But when it is, then I'm part of the first guys on this piece of technology. And that's who I am. That's exactly who I am. I'm the early adopter who just likes MarTech. So yeah.
Very cool. And I think there was something that is a little bit painful for some of us marketers that are not as naturally technical savvy as you. We struggle to pick up technology as early as you do. Is there a way for people to, if not natural, then at least train themselves to get better at this?
It's a good question. Like, I'm truly passionate about that. Like, I spend some of my free time building scripts for home automation. Though I'm not an engineer and I don't know how to code, but I can copy paste stuff and I understand it eventually. So I'm truly passionate about that. Like an artist would be passionate about their art. Can you pick it up? I think in some ways, sure. Like, you can go on Hacker News and on Product Hunt and see the things that are being launched. I would recommend that you sign up for some of those products and you reach out with product feedback to the founders. You know, when people launch a product and they're like, 3-4 people, building something, and somebody reaches out with product feedback, they love it. You do that over and over, yeah, you're going to get really great connections. And some of those will pan out, some others, won't. I've got, like, for example, I've been talking to the folks, the founders of Zapier, since before they launched, publicly. In 2013, there's a tweet of me in 2013 where I followed up on their announcement of their future product, and I said something along the lines of, like, this is either the best thing that comes to SaaS or the biggest vaporware. And they replied saying, this is not vaporware, we're working on it. And since I've been talking to Mike over that, right? And so, and I've never worked at Zapier, but I've given them, like, I've met them, I've had lunch with them, we've worked, we've given them feedback. I broke the product a couple of times. And so that is how you get good at it. Yeah. That's like, don't stay in your isolated circle. Don't stay in a little box with, like, this doesn't work. Like, I think that's the answer. I reach out, I complain, I give feedback, and people will either fire me as a customer or they will bring me on closer. It's one or the other. Like, you can't ignore me. Is probably the answer.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. It's really about being passionate about finding solutions, about winning and going the extra mile to understand, like, what's the next layer of the onion that we can peel off here.
Yeah.
So today we've promised to talk about going from growth to hyper growth, which is, I think, not a lot of people have actually seen. But just to get some standardization or definitions right here, like, if you were to define what growth is, how would you define it, and what is then the transition to hyper growth?
Well, to be honest, a lot of those are like marketing terms. But if I try to, I mean, we're marketers, obviously, right? Yeah. But if I try to make sense of it, like, for me, the way I define growth, as opposed to product or to marketing, that's the position. Right?
It's probably, yeah.
Probably, right? Well, in that case, product is about front-loading, let's say, the research about what you want to build, talking to the customers, and then making big bets. We all say we're lean. We're not that lean. I don't know anyone in SaaS that launches features and then takes them away because they don't have traction. They do a lot of work, and you, Stefan, I'm sure, like, for Dream Data, you're like, I know you're working on some features, and I know your team has been thinking about them for a while. They've been working on them. There's a lot of cost and involvement going on there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is the way to build product, with a roadmap and heavy resources. Okay, marketing is very similar. Like, you don't go as a CMO or VP of marketing doing campaigns that fail 4 or 5 times in a row and be good at your job. You're fired, all right? Growth is the opposite. Growth is the acknowledgement that you don't know what's going to work, okay? Because if you do know what's going to work, that's a job for product or for marketing, because then you need the best execution.
Yeah.
But if you don't know what's going to work, if the only thing you have is a hypothesis, then you need to minimize the cost of building in favor of finding the answer. Is this worth it? Okay, yeah. Very much like an angel investor, which I also do. I have limited insights, limited information, and you need to make a bet. And you need to, like, lower the consequence, the cost of that bet, and you need to make a lot of bets. That is what growth is about. It's about being able to place a lot of bets, in our case, in the acquisition and demand gen, sure, but placing a lot of bets to find out, by luck mostly, a couple that will pay off all of the investments, like an angel investor. It's not about a high success rate. It's about high velocity. Because I can tell you, unless you're extremely unlucky, if you run 50 experiments across your funnel, your channel, something's going to work.
Yeah.
Something. And if you do that every month, well, you're going to start finding competitive advantages, wedges that your competitors have not thought of. You're going to come up with crazy ideas. And eventually, that's going to give you the competitive advantage that you're looking for.
I think that's really a good way to describe it, G, that the individual thing that works can be luck, but the methodology behind what you're describing here is the constant experiments, the high velocity, and constantly search for stuff that works. That's not luck. That's a commitment to like doing a certain discipline.
Yeah. In addition to that, I would say it's a lot about bringing this engineering talent, skill, mindset in such a way that you can build things that are hard for your competitors to build or replicate. And more importantly, applying those resources to marketing demand gen problems, challenges. Because that gives you something that that's the thing. Like, it's obvious that if you can bring engineers to build small quasi products to drive acquisition at a cheaper cost, right? That's good for you. It's great, right? So few organizations can commit putting engineering resources on marketing that your competitors most likely won't do it, right? Because they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to attract engineers to work on those problems. They don't know how to make them work and measure the outcomes of those things. And so they don't do it. And so by nature, you're capable of building a channel that your competitors don't have. It's great. Now, like, let's just take an example here. Let's take one where I was involved recently. Let's take Ramp, which, by the way, just announced their 5-year anniversary yesterday, right? They now have 25,000 customers. It's the results are crazy for Ramp, okay? Now, let's look at, in context of the market. Ramp is a financial suite with at the heart a credit card for businesses, okay? That is a common product. There's a lot of competitors, okay? A lot. Like the most obvious probably being Brex on the startup side and Amex on the more corporate side, okay?
Yeah.
Ramp owns a single-digit percentage of the market, okay? Let's compare with Brex. It's very interesting. It's very different strategies of acquisition. Ramp, with my help and others, built a very strong growth team, ops team, and went on to build the most amazing demand gen strategies. Okay, Brex has a more traditional marketing approach. Okay, the consequence of that is if you look at Brex, you can see that they have often flip-flopped their ICP. Okay, they've said we want startups, then they don't want startups. They want SMBs, but then they only want those that have raised VC capital. Right? They flip-flop. Why is that? Because the underlying thing, it's a CAC to LTV issue, right? Is acquiring that ICP, that segment of their customers, going to be profitable based on their model of like retention and like revenue, okay?
Yeah.
And because their acquisition is traditional, mostly paid in SEO and events, well, the CAC changes over time as, the keywords get more expensive. Okay, and so when the keywords get more expensive, they got to stop the acquisition because those customers are no longer profitable. Ramp built a demand gen engine, which is heavily outbound, and SEO, which are, I'd say, very stable from a CAC perspective. Very, very stable. Like the CAC doesn't change. Sure, there's an upfront investment, but the marginal customer costs nothing. Okay, and so they were able to stick to their ICP and have a consistent message over time. And the result is what you're seeing now. You're seeing Ramp, outpace Brex, even though they started much later. There's a lot of things involved. There's great products, great founders, but like the demand gen engine is definitely part of it. So
it's super impressive. There's already a lot more questions to ask. Can traditional marketing teams break out of this? old habit of being a marketing team and becoming a growth team, or do you need to start all over, or can you like? Is there organizational things where you have a weekly meeting and then you talk experiments, or you must have been facing this problem a lot of times?
So the first thing is, it doesn't start like most organizations. It doesn't start with the team itself. It starts with the leadership. It starts with the founders. Okay, all the founders committed, ready to have this mindset of repeated failure in order to find outliers in their organization. It is not easy. Of course, we just talked about like the successful outcomes and all the positive things. There's also a ton of negative things, to be honest. There's costs to the company culture of running a growth team. Just let's go back to this growth versus product versus marketing that we just covered earlier. Product and marketing are held to, let's say, success expectations at almost every launch. Okay? And if they fail repeatedly, they're out, to put it very simply. Very simply,
Next CMO.
Exactly. Which is why the CMO retention is the shortest. The tenure is the shortest of all C-level. Okay? Yeah. On average, 18 months, which is crazy. Growth, you're now having a team which says, hey, you guys failed 6 times. What's your 7th idea? Let's go, right? But think about the company culture, right? It doesn't feel fair. Like you're going to sack the CMO and the marketing team because they failed 3 times in a row, and you're going to congratulate the growth team because they're failing repeatedly and they're learning from their failures. So though it makes sense to have this duality, there's a cost to that. And so the leadership must explain why you have different cultures like that. Okay? So it comes from the founder, from the CEO who creates that safe space. And then, yes, you need to have an inspiring growth leader that can make the case and be a talent magnet for engineers. Because if you don't have engineers, you probably don't have a growth team. And most engineers don't want to work for marketing because it feels like fluff, because often it is. And so you got to go and explain to them, right? And I've pitched dozens of engineers, maybe 100 in my career in joining growth. And I remember very well one of them at Segment who told me he wanted to work on product because that's what mattered. And I was like, what do you want to do in life, like long term? It's just SF. So very easy. I knew what he was going to say. He said like, oh, I want to be a founder. I'm like, okay, great. You want to be a founder. In the future, you're a technical guy. You want to build a product. Okay. What's the most important thing in the success of a company? All right. And he said like, well, revenue. I'm like, great. That's what I do. Like I can teach you how to make money with your company. Like building product doesn't. I know a lot of people who built a lot of great products and found 0 customers. Okay. The opposite exists. I know a lot of people who built crappy products with great demand gen and are making a ton of money. Okay. So just where do you want to focus? What do you want to learn now? Do you want to learn about doing even more product, or you want to learn about how to make money here? He joined the team.
And I think this is here. There's probably also a gap between the San Francisco understanding of what's needed for growth and the European landscape of us marketers around here, where you rarely see any engineers on marketing teams in Europe, is my experience at least.
It depends. I want to say that in France, a country that I know well, obviously.
You do, yes.
Obviously, there's a lot of growth people, a lot of growth engineers. There's a lot of amazing growth teams at many places. And I hope that, I have, some, let's say, legacy there. But yes, there's a lot of growth people, growth engineers, growth teams in France.
Very interesting. So now the term kind of hypergrowth, when do you start talking about that? Or what would that be, the definition of, sorry?
So I think it's about when you build a product, you build a startup, you generally start by going to the 5, 10, 15% of the market, which are early adopters, people like me, people who will take the call because they're just curious. Okay.
Yeah.
If you can't sell to those people, you don't have a product. Just go back to the drawing board, man. If the people who just want to try new stuff don't want to try your stuff, then yeah, you don't have a business. Generally, you go through that stage and you find at least one channel audience fit, something that works. You can find those people. Okay. But then you exhaust that pipeline of the market. And at that point is probably when you raise your Series A, because on the traction of those early adopters,
yeah, it looks beautiful.
It looks beautiful, right? And then you're like, and then after the Series A, well, you'll say, hey, we want more of this, but there's no more to be had because that strategy, that message, that channel is just like, you've exhausted it. That's it, man. So you end up in this interesting conundrum where you have more money, more brand, but the things don't work anymore. They don't scale.
Yes.
Or they scale at a very, let's say, increasing CAC. All right. You need to pay a lot more to bring those the new people. And every new audience is incrementally more expensive. Okay. HyperGrowth is about how do you create scaling effects, scaling economies, so that as you go beyond that Series A, as you go beyond those first couple million revenue, your CAC per customer goes down. And so you can create this momentum where every new customer is cheaper while your ACV is stable or goes up and your margins improve.
That's the dream.
Business. Well, that's the core business. So that's HyperGrowth. If you can do that, then you can just pour fuel on that thing. All right. And that takes, experience, but also knowing how to scale things. Like that's where I personally specialize. Like I have my own like niche little market. There's just so few people in B2B SaaS that have gone through this, 5 to 50 million multiple times in just a couple of years and say, hey, yes, I understand how we can 3x, 4x every channel every year for the next 3 years, right? Because it's just so rare. So few people have the chance of doing it even once.
Absolutely. There's is it 100 people, 200 people in the world?
Oh, it's less. I think there's I think there's maybe 50, 60 people, of which half are retired.
They've made so much money doing it that they don't.
Yeah, that's the thing. But there's just so few companies that have grown like that, right? So that's HyperGrowth. HyperGrowth is about creating acquisition strategies, channels that have huge scale, diminishing CAC. That's it.
That's wonderful.
It only works for companies that have a huge TAM to start with, of which Ramp is a great example. For example, right? But there's a couple of others. Even when I was at Gorgias, Gorgias has a pretty big TAM. It's every e-commerce business. It's it's a big enough TAM, and Drift's segments also huge TAMs. That's where you can That's why I was able to learn and build this mindset.
If we then go into kind of what are the challenges you meet then on your way, presently right now when you're trying to do this hypergrowth, and then how do you then work with them to get out of these challenges that you're gonna face when you exhaust the early adopters?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways I could answer that question. There's the challenges that I face personally as a growth advisor in the companies I advise, and sometimes my assessment is wrong. Sometimes I think now is the right time to, accelerate, and I'm wrong. For this business, for this product and their audience, we think we're ready to scale, and we try, and it doesn't work, and we learn the hard way. And it still happens to me. As of today, I still sometimes make a mistake. I talk to founders, I do my due diligence, and I'm wrong. And that's okay. That's the cost of doing business. Sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I think that I know how to do something like a outbound campaign. I've done outbound so many times. I feel comfortable, but then you fall into this mistake, this hubris feeling comfortable, and you mess up, and it doesn't work. Right? And you've skipped the steps. You wanted to go too fast. You skipped the steps. You didn't follow the process. You didn't follow the experimentation process. I still make that mistake. Sometimes founders come to me and say, hey, G, I've seen your talks in outbound. I've seen what you've done at 3amp and else. I want you to build the outbound for me.
Yes,
and I try to push back. And then eventually sometimes I relent. I'm like, okay, cool. But like we need, like, this is expensive. We need resources. And they say, yes, we'll give you everything. I'm like, okay, let's do it. That's hubris. Because I skipped the experimentation, the validation steps. And now I have a company that's committed, that's putting engineers, PMs, copywriters, $1 million of budget towards like building this thing without confirmation that this is the right thing to do. We do that for 6 months. Nothing. And then everybody's annoyed. And then I realized I should have told them that we got a test, but we all wanted to go fast, and here we are. And what's the learning there? We didn't follow the growth process. We followed a product or a marketing process where we thought we had conviction, and we didn't.
Yeah, good point. So, like, what is the kind of the signals then that you need to see when you know, okay, now is the time to push in the money here?
Yep. Build for cheap those channels and strategies, that growth team that is going to find those wins, and then test for as cheap as possible. Let's go into paid, for example. So often I find companies, I talk to founders as an investor or whatnot, and I see the marketing mix, and obviously that's where I ask questions, and they build plans up into the right with like slowly increasing CAC, and I ask them like, well, have you tested the depth of your paid channel? Do you know how much you can spend before you max out, that efficiency curve? They haven't. They're like, no, I don't have the budget, so I haven't tried. And I'm like, what prevents you from doubling the budget next week, and then doubling again the following week, and then the following week, until you can like put the dots along that curve? Like, sure, you're going to spend a bit more budget, but it's just for a couple of weeks. Like, you have the budget for that.
Yeah.
And none of them do it. Just so easy. Just try. Just double the budget every week on paid. Okay. The same is true for SEO. Like, can you get to page 1? Well, what if you put all the efforts on one keyword just to be able to put the dots along that curve as a way to forecast? Yeah. How many emails can you send to one person before they unsubscribe or they're pissed? All right. How many times can you reach out to a company? How many people? Just test that. Pressure test. That's how we know. And if the pressure test gives you confirmation that you can go 10x the volume of what you're doing, there you have an opportunity. Yeah. And now you know how much to raise. And then you can go to the VCs and say, hey guys, like, I know how to spend that $5 million that I'm asking. And we have confirmation. This is the curve. We know the CAC. We know the features we're going to launch. Here's the ACV. Here's going to be the CAC to LTV. All right. But with data, not just with hope.
Sounds so easy, G, when you get into it. No, but I'm really like, it's such a good reminder to hear like experiment, and then you can push in budget afterwards. Oh, okay. So Ivan Carrera has a question for you. So I'll pull it up here on the screen. So SaaS companies addressing SMBs can rely on a marketing strategy strongly based on SEO plus outbound, growth driven by a collab between growth marketers and sales. Whereas SaaS companies addressing bigger companies have to work on events and more inbound approaches. Also, where does ABM fit in here, G?
Yeah.
So I guess it's this distinction between the SMB market that has a lot of accounts and then the larger market that has a fewer accounts.
Yeah, absolutely. My friend Thomas Tunguns actually did this fantastic chart a while back with the number of customers you needed to get to $1 billion in valuation. And he has like this, like basically the number of like, it goes from like, oh no, it's not Thomas. Sorry.
It's Christoph Jans, right?
It's Christoph Jans 1.9. Yes.
Yeah.
With the paper napkin he did with the whales, the rabbits, the mouse, the mices or whatever. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. He has all the animals on
I'll put it into the chat here.
Please. So a couple of thoughts there. First, there's no denying the reality of that. And growth doesn't apply on the far right end of that chart. If your total market worldwide is 1,000 businesses, there's no experiments that you can run to get statistical significance. And flip side, if you are on the far left side and your ACV is $39, well, that's a whole other challenge because you don't have any CAC to spend. The only thing you can do is PLG and thus virality. Now, that's great, but that's a different challenge. It's interesting. I'm working on a talk for next week about that. On PLG, PLS, and sales-led. So product-led growth, product-led sales, and sales-led. Okay? And just to be very clear, product-led growth means that you don't have any CAC to spend because your ACV is low. It's okay because you have a huge market, but it means the customers need to acquire themselves. Okay? Yeah. And here's the point I'm trying to make. It's that the CAC of the transaction, the cost of the transaction overall is the same. Regardless of where you are along that chart, which is what most people don't realize. If you're going to buy a new, let's say, knowledge or storage information, like you want to buy a Notion or something like a Notion, like there's a gazillion options. And they're all self-serve, okay? Or Slab or whatever. As a small business, you're going to do your own research. You're going to sign up. You're going to try, upload a couple of documents, maybe invite a couple of people, try again, okay? That is a cost that you are supporting. You are doing the effort. You are selling to yourself the solution. The vendor, the SaaS, has no costs. I mean, the cost of selling the software, which is like zilch, okay?
Yeah.
If you move to the right, okay, now you're doing a sales-led approach, and maybe you got an outbound email, you're taking a demo, and you might not be considering any other option, right? And the vendor, are supporting all the costs. But the cost of the transaction is the same. It's just a question of who supports that cost. In the PLG, the buyer supports the cost. In the sales-led, the seller supports the cost. Same transaction costs. And that's what's important.
I guess there's an entrance fee of developing a lot of content that is able to handle all the questions that a customer might have.
Or not. Some people don't have, if you think of Dropbox, does Dropbox have a lot of content to support all the questions early on? No. Not that much. It's you either get it or you don't buy the product. It's okay. The market is big enough to support that. Right? Did you read any documentation from Zoom on how to use Zoom? No. Well, the product just works, and that's it. Right? And so there's a lot of cases of viral products where there's no cost of serving the product. And that's the second important thing. Can you serve your product for free or not? Most of us assume that the servicing the product is free, but that's wrong. In a sales-led approach, you got to pay the salespeople, you got to pay the CSMs and all that. There's a cost to that. But that means the way your product gets used defines the motions you can have. I'll give you an example. Let's say that you are an AI company, okay? And you build image or videos, right? There's a cost to running every one of those requests. You can't just have any person come in and send you a million requests because then you're going bankrupt. Okay? So now you need to put some friction, paying friction or some qualification friction. Eventually you want, that CAC to LTV to get you in an equilibrium someplace.
So yeah, I'll take one question, then I'll take the next question then. So Jacob is asking here, any thoughts on how or where to consistently get new growth experiment ideas?
Hey, Jacob, it's been a while. I know Jacob. It's interesting. I'd say I am part of a bunch of communities where I observe. How can I frame this? Oh, I know. Okay. Every experiment has a cost of running the experiment and is very likely to fail. Okay? My goal is to get as many successes and as few failures as possible. So what am I doing? I'm trying to see what all the others are doing and where they have failed and where they have succeeded to replicate the learnings. Okay? Because then I get a win for free. I'm not supporting any of the costs. All right?
Smart.
And so my target market is mid-stage companies, late Series A, Series B, Series C. And I'm in a lot of early stage communities of people who are trying some aggressive growth hacks that, they're figuring that out. And then I look at it and I'm like, this is interesting. Can I apply that to my late stage business? Because I have enough buy-in from the founders to do that, and most competitors don't. And so I do that.
Are there any of the Slack communities or you want to plug here?
Yeah, sure. Reforge is really good. Reforge is amazing. I am, because I'm French, I'm also part of the, Growth Hackers France Slack. Within my organization, HyperGrowth, we share a lot of things too. But it's a private communities where people share stuff. I don't know that there's any place publicly where those things are shared anymore, since Growth Hackers, mostly disappeared.
What happened to that website? It was so good 5 years ago when
it's not a business.
Weekly Digest came out.
Yeah, but it's not a business. It's the same reason why Growth Hackers as a product for experimentation and others that are building experimentation-led products don't survive, because there's not enough growth teams to support. It's not a big TAM.
At a certain point, that Weekly Digest was so good that came out from there.
But what Adrian is saying is right. He's saying that's what a good growth expert is paid for. He's right in the sense that the reason why I do advisory and I'm paid a lot for that is I'm really good at coming up with aggressive, creative ideas that have a chance of working and that no one else has thought of. I'm the guy. I'm like, in a way, I'm an artist. I come up with people's like, oh, this is nuts. But what if? What if this worked? Then just think about the possibilities. Okay? And often, and I want to close this topic on that. Often in growth, I will go meet the sales team and I will see what do they do? Can I automate that? A lot of my learnings have been from looking at the top 1 or 2% of the sales folks on the floor and figuring out, can I automate that workflow?
Yeah. That's a really good tangible thing to do. If we talk about channels for growth, this is a good a favorite topic of mine. What would you say kind of are the overrated channels right now, and what are the underrated channels? I think one thing that everybody is seeing as growth is getting more and more expensive, because as marketers, we're not seeing a lot of new channels open up nowadays. So everything consolidates, and then the prices of auctions go up. But so what have you been observing as kind of what are the overrated ones nowadays, and where are people not paying enough attention?
Yeah, and I think you're right. But if we try to take a step back to explain what you're trying to say here on the paid channel, I'm missing the word exactly, but if you look at paid, the benefit of paid is being priced out. What I mean by that is everyone's doing paid. When everyone's doing paid, and you're in a competitive market, basically, you're getting to a point where you get to a neutral CAC to LTV, because everybody's doing the same thing. And so the market reaches an equilibrium where no one's making money. Okay, that's the ideal outcome for Google, right? Everyone has to do it, because otherwise you're losing to the others. But you're basically giving them all of the LTV. Okay. Because if the CAC is too high, then no one does it. But if it's too, so they reach just the limit where you're no longer making money. Okay, that's the ideal outcome. It's become so standard now in paid. There's not a lot of hacks to be had anymore. All right, that's the reality of the thing. There's not a lot of hacks. So that's one. On the other channels, so I think ABM didn't really work out, or there's cases where it works, but it's not there was this big wave of ABM where it would be for everyone years ago. That didn't happen. Okay, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Flip side, I think SEO and outbound are still working really well. and have a lot of ways to go. There's interesting challenges in the SEO world with what's
I was
going on
about
with
to
AI.
say, can we please go into that little topic? Because if everybody can produce content at mega scale, is there anything interesting there?
Yeah, I think there's a tangent I want to take before the end of the podcast. There, if we have the time, but we'll get there. The content generation at scale, I think the problem is not so much like how the content is generated, because we've been doing crappy content for a while, and so now we're doing less crappy content at a bigger scale. It doesn't change logic. The question is there value in this? Same thing as when you're doing automated emails. Are the emails valuable? Are they helpful? That's how Google measures a search result value. That's how people evaluate the emails that they get, right? Are you helping them in their journey? There's a second thing which we do need to talk about here, which is very important, which is why do people spend time on your email, on your marketing copy, on your whatever that you do to try and engage with them, okay? And that's very deep into the psychology trench, right? And it's reciprocity. People will respond at a very high rate if they feel obliged because of reciprocity, because they think that you have spent time and effort in trying to reach out to them, okay? That's just how it works. The problem with AI is that buyers, consumers, will become more and more skeptical that any content is from a human, okay? When great emails, great content, great handwritten letters, great phone calls are likely to be AI generated, well, and that's in the near future, right? Then people
I just know you're gonna get into automated phone calls at some point.
But then you're gonna feel not obliged to respond. You can ignore that. The problem with that is you're going to ignore everyone. If you no longer can tell the difference between AI and not AI, then the reciprocity click switch trigger no longer will operate. You can ignore. That's what's going to happen. And that's going to be fascinating. Yes.
Yeah, because you get to a certain point where everything is done in the same way. So kind of how do you stand out in that sense? I'm gonna pull up a question from Pelle here. I don't know how much you've been working with pricing in the past, but how do you think growth and pricing is connected? And what are some of the best growth strategies you've seen where pricing has been leveraged?
Well, if you're allowed to test with pricing, then that's interesting, because then you can start testing some. Let's flip the question. The growth strategies are a function of CAC. The channels that you can do are a function of how much you can spend. Can you run events? Can you run a gifting campaign? Can you run a handwritten letter campaign? Right? These are a function of how much you can spend and the conversion rate. It's a function of CAC. Okay? Your CAC is a function of your margin and the price of your product. So here's the question. Can you increase the price of the product in such a way that it opens channels that you didn't have before? Okay. Can your product support that? Can your audience support that? If it can you open a new motion? And here's where it becomes interesting. If you have typically a PLG, PLS model, freemium, self-serve model, can you open a sales-led channel? Or can you not? Okay, and that is a function of your ability to price. So if you can do experiments to figure out how to price, then you can open those new channels, the new motions.
Yeah, or maybe there's a very easy to onboard feature that you can make available for free, and then move them down the funnel, the people that come to your website in that sense, like the classic kind of freemium kind of approach to it.
It's harder. It's much harder. Yeah, I was thinking, how can I answer that? It is much harder to open a freemium model when you are sales-led than opening a sales-led channel when you're freemium. It's easier to sell things at a more expensive price and create new features that you can sell for a higher price than having a complicated product and putting like pieces of way to find something you can sell on a self-serve motion without support. I don't think I've ever seen it work. I don't think I have a single example in mind where a company was doing sales-led, with CSMs and high ACV and 5-6-figure contracts, and then came out with like a $99 plan. I don't think I have a single example of that. Just think about it.
Yeah. So if you start from the beginning, when you start a company, go the other path then.
Well, yeah, pick your battles. But if you want to do both motions, yeah, you want to start with the freemium and then go up, which is a typical way to do things.
Yeah.
For sure.
Then I'm not sure you know a lot about this that Ashley is asking. What do you think about connected TV, out of home, those things that are very hard to show ROI of?
So I'm not the specialist.
Do you avoid them or what?
Okay. So I'm not the specialist, but I know a guy who did wonders there, Cody at Ramp, who's the guy who runs all paid things, all performance things at Ramp. Did a lot of that. He did podcasts, sponsoring, connected TV, out of home ads, a bunch of things. Let's say the measurement of impact is difficult if you have a limited budget. There are ways to do it. For example, you can do for some of those, you can do geographical testing for connected TV. You can do geographical testing. And so just target the city of Austin or your city of choice and just hammer it for 3 weeks and compare with a sample city, and then you compare the trends of both. So there are ways to do that. Some cases it's not possible. Like podcasts, you don't really control what the podcast sponsoring goes, but you can measure. You can create some landing pages. There are ways to do it.
Yeah,
it tends to be measurable when you have large budgets and a large market, because then the N is so large, you can start seeing some good statistical significance. Obviously, if you have a small market and a small budget, just don't go there.
Yeah, start somewhere else. Gee, now we only have 10 minutes left of your time. If we say we will buy your beer or wine or whatever, could you share a few like some really tangible stuff, some tactics that works right now?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a lot of the same what I've done in the past, but creating the best possible experience for the customer is what works. Now, let's be specific about what that means. Let's give examples here, okay? You are the next Ramp, or you are Ramp, right? Or you have a large SaaS, and you have customers across the spectrum of quality of ACV, because you have products at $99 and you have a sales team that sells $9,000 a month, whatever. Okay. And so you end up typically with this talk to sales or sign up button on your homepage, right?
Yep. Same.
Everybody has that.
Yeah.
Well, that is a failure, Stefan. That is the failure of you not being able to decide what is best for the customer. You are letting the customer decide. Okay, you're letting them decide whether they want to pay a lot and talk to your sales team or whether they should cheap out and go to the product. That is the failure. Why are you letting them decide? It's because you don't know enough about them and because you have not created both paths in a flexible way. The modern way would be to do what my friends at Ramp, I have helped them build, but what also Gong does, my friends at Matt Kudu do. Okay, a bunch of people are doing that, which is figure out who the customer is, either with IP to domain detection, either with email enrichment, ask for the minimum part of information, and then put them on the path which you think is the best. It's very easy for any business. It's very easy for any business that I meet that has some good definition of their ICP. I'm like, okay, who are the customers? Who are the customers you really care that are a good fit for this enterprise or mid-market product? How many of them? Okay, there's 10,000, there's 20,000 accounts, which are great. Do you have a list of those customers? Yeah, of course we have this spreadsheet. Great. If somebody with the domain of one of those 20,000 signs up. What do you do? And they're like, nothing. Or we will reach out to them in 2 days. I'm like, well, that's terrible. Because if you know that enterprise potential customer, as soon as the domain appears on the site, you should say, whoa, hold on. Let's talk.
Here's the VIP treatment for you.
Yes, obviously. No one does that, or so few people do that. Okay? But it's so obvious. I figured that out when at Segment, we saw the drop off in conversion to paid by company size. Okay? And it had like some like waves like that. You know why that is? It's because there are specific sizes in businesses where you can't use Segment on your own because there's like a legal and security that jumps in. And you have this, you're not like, if you're, for example, like, I'm working with Reddit these days, right? And if you're Reddit, you can't just like sign up and drop the JavaScript of Segment on your homepage. It's just not going to work. You can't do that. Okay.
Yeah, no.
And so you end up in the product, there's nothing. And so it's a bad experience. What should happen if Reddit signs up for a ramp or for a Segment is like, yes, you prevent them from going in the product. You stop them. Try signing up for ramp. Try signing up with a large company domain and a small company domain. You'll see you're going to have a different experience. You will have a different experience. It's the same for Gong. That is very easy and tangible. Figure out who are your enterprise, your valuable accounts, put them in a CSV. Somebody signs up, your form queries that list of domains and creates an experience. That experience could be a chat. It could be a modal screen. Whatever it is, create a better experience. Flip side, if they're not in that list, why would you want them to book a meeting with your sales team?
Yeah, get them into the free trial and see. Yeah.
So when you think of like lead scoring can be very simple. It could be for Boolean. Do you want that account to talk to your sales team or not? And that's it. So the form is a value add that's shown only to the people that are eligible for that offer.
Yeah.
There you go.
Very nice one. Very nice one, G. There's so many more questions that I'm sitting with for.
Then you need to pay.
Yeah. Good one, G. Actually, speaking of that, G, then if people do want to pay you to work with you,
it's too expensive.
It's expensive.
It's very expensive. Yeah.
If they want to, like engage with you in some way, have you as a speaker, have you as a consultant, investor? What's the path?
Yeah. The investor is the one where I pay, so I don't like that one. I prefer being paid than paying. But I'd say I run something which is called HyperGrowth Partners, where I figured out there was a market of all of my friends in growth, marketing CMOs, VPs, who are eager to replicate their wins in earlier stage companies. Maybe they are in the Series C and Series D. They want to go back to the Series A, but they just want to do it a couple hours a week. I've launched HyperGrowth Partners so that we have this collective, which in exchange for mostly equity, will help founders, growth teams with people that have been there, done it. So you want to talk to us? Like, I'd love to talk to you, at hypergrowthpartners.com, or, just find me on LinkedIn and just reach out to me. And we're a best fit for folks that are a couple of million in revenue and are looking to 2x or 3x, this year, have some resources and want the best possible advisor to help them a couple hours a week to drive the change, drive the velocity of experimentation, the frameworks, the technology changes, the implementation, and all that in a way that we know works. So that's what we do. And then myself, I specialize in the very rare cases of huge markets and enormous value of when you can decrease the CAC. So, that's why I did ramp. That's why I'm on Reddit these days and so on.
It's so impressive, G. And I think like the best possible pitch is probably that if you want to avoid all the very, very costly mistakes that all these people in HyperGrowth Partners have done in their past, you pay them to save you all those money and time that you'll go on.
The cost is there. It's again, who supports the cost?
Yeah.
Yes, you have the option of supporting the cost yourself. It's just gonna the cost will be the same. You can either take the time and the cost, or you can pay now to avoid the future cost. The cost is the same.
Super good, G.
It's
G, thank you so much for teaching growth to all of us. we'll end the stream now, but on behalf of all of us, I just want to say thank you for taking the time here and talking with us.
My pleasure.